Okay, welcome to the ninth Newcomers tournament. We are here, round one on Mars, with 3 Retalk, Mingsu, and Swordsmith. I'm Blues here with DT.
Hello.
And we have a chemical colony this time. Bunch of expensive things.
A lot of green prizes. Well, only 4 green prizes, but those are some nice green prizes.
Yeah, chem colony with expensive chems is going to be interesting. There are a fair number of locations on this map found, I think, mostly in the top right.
Yep. Also see some scavenger spots, no nomad spots, because all of those silicon tiles are single tiles.
There are
You can
core samples, but you probably don't want to rely on those.
Not when you can choose claims. You should always go for claims if you can.
Alright, so we're seeing a robot, a few scientists, and a scavenger. Scavenger, pretty standard, found right next to water, is very nice, has easy access to carbon and aluminum. Robot, iron, aluminum, steel, all pretty standard and all
That's
nice
fine.
and close. The swordsmith does not have his steel metals on top of iron. Scientific bonus is important to take advantage of.
But they are next to each other, so that's a plus in my book.
Right.
Well, Mingsu has 2 steel mills, but they are separated, so he's like missing an extra steel mill.
Right, essentially you're
With
seeing this
production.
2 different mistakes from each of these scientists. One, taking advantage of the scientific bonus to use the iron straight from the ground, but not having any adjacency. A difficult set of resources to make work as a scientist. The other one, mining iron and bringing it in to turn into steel there, which is not efficient as a scientist.
So a bunch of people upgraded now. Retalk also got a claim from the black market. He has a nice base going on. He probably wants to go into some life support by now. He has 3 claims to do that.
Right, already has his water secured for that. Looks like he's going to go into a geothermal instead. Power is climbing slowly, but it is only at the $60-ish mark. The geotherm is a pretty significant investment of carbon that's going to delay his HQ3 upgrade and not likely to make him much money at all for some time.
Yeah, most of the time you delay your power buildings until you reach HQ level 3. But yeah, he has an extra claim, so I don't really mind.
Right, it's
Can still work around it.
certainly not a bad building, just one that's probably a little suboptimal, going to slow him down a little bit. Swordsmith also going into a geotherm. It's a little worse for him, I think, just because his steel is much weaker than Retalk's carbon. It's producing
Plus he's scientific, so that geo will cost 120 steel, which is a lot.
Right, it's going to be quite expensive. An interesting mutiny from 3 onto Swordsmith's iron. I'm not entirely sure what the motivation behind that is. I guess this iron's not worth very much. 3 isn't really using the iron for anything, just selling it down. So its price is already going to be cratering, as much like the aluminum, which he's auto-selling while producing 8 per second of. Looks like he's going to switch out of some of that though, and that will help. Right,
Iron is cheap, but that's a really cheap claim. You can put like a solar panel down there for that cheap. That would still be useful.
Right, what is it going to be actually? It's going to be an iron mine. It is a bit unfortunate. That's going to cost Mingsu a lot in shipping. The fuel cost for this sort of distance is not trivial. And the iron's not going to do very much for him, unfortunately.
3 is finally going into steel now. Steel, he has a lot of aluminum, probably enough for his upgrades till HQ level 5. So that's going to be good. He should stop auto-selling iron though. But that should still be fine.
Basically, when any resource gets very cheap, auto-selling it's really not giving you much of anything, and it's much more useful to accumulate a nice stockpile of it if later on you need to use the claims from the iron on something else. You have the option of switching out of that and still being able to sustain your steel production off of your stockpile.
I must say, free is kinda helping Swordsmith because the iron price is so low. He doesn't need, like, the steel mills don't need to be on iron, because it doesn't matter.
Right, it's definitely been a mistake throughout to keep mutinying this metal mine and just keeping iron cheap if you're going to try to make this play work. Until Mingsu actually got that iron off the auction. He would have been the only person with iron access, so he could have done something to manipulate that price, but it's difficult to make that work in the early game, and when you're selling iron down constantly, it's not gonna get it done.
Power is shorting and Mingsu stole the geo from Retalk, so...
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing with geotherms. They're big, juicy targets.
Retalk is also going into more solar panels. He can make power money, he's going to make power money. He still has 2 claims. I would probably put more claims into power buildings, because if you can make power in this price, then you're going to make lots of profit.
Right, already making this $480 a second, definitely potential for more. One option for sure would have been to leave his water tiles down instead of replacing them with solar panels and just use the extra claims to put the solar panels somewhere else.
These auctions go way too cheap. Normally you want to bid around 20k for something like a boost. Well, for a boost, probably 28k, but...
Right, like a lot of times there's a lot of debt you can take on to for most auctions that are useful in some way to you. It's definitely going to make balancing your debt later on harder, and it's also sometimes inadvisable if you're in Retok's position per se, where you are making money off of power, but there is definitely room to push it well over 10k.
So Retalk is going into a pen lab. He still has 3 claims left. He also bought 3 claims from the black market, so that's a really good thing he did. He probably needs to go into more reactors because he has these chemicals up, and that is really consuming his fuel.
Right, still has these 2 claims sitting around, still hasn't gotten back into water or into those reactors you're talking about. Just a little bit not quite on the ball making use of these claims. The other thing that's going on with Retalk, I think, is that he's been building a lot of these high-value buildings, and just because he's been so focused on the claims, he hasn't been able to goon any of them, which lets other people, like Swordsmith, take advantage of that quite well.
Did you see that? Swordsmith stole the Battle Lab and boosted it to get teleportation.
Mutiny boost is definitely not something you see often, and it's a very interesting play. It's just easy to punish, I think, if anyone else drops mutiny on it or something. But so far, no one is doing anything, so he's gonna get a nice little boost off that.
Okay. Mingsu is in D-depths, that's most because he doesn't have a lot of power up. He doesn't have any power up, I believe.
Right. It's a lot.
He's getting 2 geos now, so he can still manage, and he can still buy Cook the Books if he is suffering, which he is in D+1 debt.
I definitely once you cross into the C or higher level, especially this early on, you're in a lot of danger of just falling into a debt spiral where the interest keeps compounding so much that you can't really do anything about it. And so, like you were saying, it has a lot to do with being very late into power, which has a lot to do with all these non-adjacent buildings early on. Eventually this steel mill got down, but also the shipping.
He's also the only person that is not really in life support when he needs life support to... Otherwise, life support will be his depth, so that's going to be a problem for him.
Right, he does have 2 reactors down, but yeah. One thing that's always going to be true as a scientist producing life support away from your base is that if you're selling it quickly, that's just going to mean that you're accruing a lot more debt, and it's something to really watch out for. It's difficult to manage around that.
So if you're free, what should you do at this point? He is in D-Debt, still level 3, cannot really upgrade because electronics is so high.
Feels like pretty much the only thing you can really do is cook the books right here. It's not enough, it's not going to save you, but yeah.
Yes, but how is he going to upgrade with these tiles that he has? Does he need to go into electronics?
He needs to get out of the aluminum for sure. That's definitely been a consistent problem this game. Just a lot of overproduction of the iron and the aluminum, which have been low value pretty much the whole time. Not quite using it on the high value buildings, the steel, the life support. And there's definitely room for him to do that. More adjacency would be very useful.
I like what Retalk is doing. He should, yeah, he's upgrading chemicals as good. He's also going into an off-world. Oh, off-world's good. 44k, yeah. Off-world's amazing. He's putting it next to the colony. It gives the bonus, I guess.
Not really a bad thing with no dynamites or magnetic storms.
Yeah, I guess, but I see 3 black market items that could hurt him, so I might lean to Faking Machine and put it next to the base.
Faking Machines is definitely a fair alternative, just in terms of without Faking Machines, colony versus base. Colony makes a lot of sense without any goon poppers or anything that help you really target down that off-world.
I should also ship something. I should sell his chemicals to ship something, and he's not doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, this auction. How much would you bid on this, and who should get it? I think Retalk and Swordsmith can really bid high on it, but goes for 14k to Retalk. It's a really nice one for him.
Yeah, it'll do a lot of work for him. Yeah, Swordsmith definitely could have afforded to take it. Isn't an amazing target for him to drop it on, I guess, but it would have been something. Definitely get his optimizations running faster and just produce a little more. But yeah, at this point, Retalk, I think, has a pretty substantial lead. Just being able to get all these investments going off of the early power money, off of a very nice found that let him get moving quickly.
And finally, 3 is going for reactors. It's going to be nice. Does he have water? He doesn't have water, but water is still cheap, so he's still going to make a profit of it. He probably wants to buy some water.
Right. Retalk, one more thing that he's been doing very nicely this game, not auto-selling resources consistently like some of the other players have been. So even though he's producing this 9.6 excess water per second right now, it's not going to be subsidizing 3's production, for example.
That's really nice. He's doing good. I think he has the best chance to win now.
Yeah, it's been a very solid game.
Does Mingsu have tiles? Yeah, he has these reactors. Okay, I didn't see those. He has 2 reactors next to Swordsmith.
He has 2 pairs of reactors now in that area. They're going to be making him very nice money, and he has recovered somewhat from his debt problem. He has also spent a lot of money in his own stock, which sometimes can be pretty necessary when you're that deeply in debt. Especially in a game like this where Retalk has this much money, he could have bought pretty much anyone out at several points. So
also going into class now, off base would be really nice if he had teleportation, but that's already taken. Yeah, it's already taken from the other scientific, which the other scientific Swordsmith is not really using it. would rather see that he went for carbon scrubbing. Because if you have water and iron next to your base, the only thing you need is really carbon. Maybe silicon, but you can use like one tile, one claim for that. But still, it's denying everyone else for taking teleportation. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Like, in a lot of ways, I think Swordsmith had a lot of nice ideas. He made some solid plays. Yeah, got off to a rough start with the HQ1 metal mine steel mills, but eventually with the mutiny onto the patent lab, once picking up teleportation didn't do quite that much for him, but it definitely had the potential to do a lot. Could go and steal pretty easily. These carbon tiles will be useful with that. Just ended up stalling out a bit. The move into the optimization center is a pretty big late game commitment, but Swordsmith just isn't really set up to do all that much quite yet. There's a lot of why he's falling behind.
I think around this time Retalk should be starting buying stocks. He has 500,000. A lot of money.
Right. Part of me wonders if he maybe doesn't quite realize how much money he has. Just so much of it is sitting in the carbon and the chemicals and the food. So while sitting on those stockpiles can be very nice for propping prices up, for making a little bit of income off colony demand, or for preventing people from entering markets, you need to be very careful that you're not giving money away. Right now he isn't in chemicals or food even, but carbon is a pretty big problem with Swordsmith getting those two tiles. Probably doesn't matter with the stock play.
It doesn't matter this game, but I'd like to see Retalk like next time when he's playing, he should buy into himself first, at least defend himself so he has secure, and then start attacking other players. But I think in this game it's still fine, he's going to win.
Right, he has a big enough fleet in this game that he can afford to do this. In other games, it definitely makes a lot of sense to defend yourself first. You're spending a lot of money completing these buyouts on other players, which leaves you open to other players attacking you. So buying up your own stocks is a way to make that significantly harder and help consolidate your lead a bit.
So this scientific Swordsmith is now out. What do you think he should have done differently? Like, if you look at his space,
I think a lot of it comes down to the HQ1, well, even the found. It could have been one tile to the southeast, could have been directly connected to the iron to start, could have had those steel mills running a bit more efficiently to start, picked up some aluminum, gotten the upgrades a bit faster. Later on, claiming all these water tiles was useful, I think. I don't quite remember. I think they're mostly reactors. At some point, there were a lot of electronics on the aluminum
yeah,
tiles.
I saw a lot of electronics, and you really... If life support is good, then it's better to go for life support.
Right. It's important to remember that the electronics do produce at half the rate, and also putting them down on aluminum means you're still paying for the carbon and the silicon. The carbon was expensive for large chunks of the game, so not really using the scientific bonus to its full potential. Also, I think the optimization center might have been a bit early. It was a good play in general. When prices are this high, there's a lot of room to optimize and get extra money there, but you need to be careful you're not delaying your upgrades too much, things like that, because having that bunch of extra claims is just worth so much more.
Retalk has 2 offers up now. He should keep upgrading his resources. He probably doesn't need Battle Lab anymore. He still is in it. might want to get carbon scrubbing and then remove these 3 carbon tiles into something else, but it doesn't really matter. It's going to buy out Mingsu, and Mingsu is out of this race, this round at least. What do you think Mingsu did wrong?
Then I think it has a lot to do with Found and HQ1. This is
the adjacency.
Right, this isn't really a spot meant for a scientist. Like, nothing's connected. You're not... As a scientist, you want a lot of buildings with adjacency. You could have maybe made it work a little better if you found a little to the northeast. Just start off with 2 adjacent steel mills instead of 3 separate ones. 3 separate ones give you 1.5 steel a second, 2 adjacent ones also give you 1.5 per second, and give you that extra claim to work with, and don't cost quite as much power. Adjacency, very important.
And Retalk wins. 2 off-worlds, commanding lead. I still want to talk about 3 here, the robotic. He was really struggling early on to upgrade. He's still HQ level 3, mainly because electronics is so high. He went into too many aluminum mines and too many iron mines, and he couldn't like snowball through that.
Right, he got off to a reasonably quick start. I think he might have even been the first to HQ3, but just a lot of his production wasn't really working for that. Just a lot of iron, aluminum, like you said, selling that constantly. A lot of money spent on the mutinies. 2 on this metal mine, 1 on a water pump over here, I believe. And none of that was just making very much money in the moment, and it wasn't getting converted into anything that was making a lot of money either. There's a lot of... It's delayed his upgrades a lot, and contributed a lot to him stalling out, getting stuck on this HQ3 with a lot of debt.
If I look at the black market, I see a lot of claims taken from Retalk and 2 from SWAT Smith. So that's also like a huge factor on how the game went.
Yep. Claims definitely always a very nice thing to be picking up constantly throughout an FFA, at least until maybe 25, 35k.
Around that, yeah. Around that range.
I do want to say for Retalk in particular, when you have that large of a lead, I think continuing to pick up some of those claims, like the 4th, 5th, 6th claim, might have been a bit unnecessary, might have been better off with more goon squads protecting these very useful advanced buildings, preventing people from finding ways back into the game off of those if they mutiny them, or off of that geothermal. Little things there that maybe weren't quite where they needed to be.
I agree. You might even want to hoard some of these black market items, so if there's a potential threat later on, you can use all the black market items on that person. But still a great game from him.
Definitely
He did
well done.
It's a good scavenger spot. The only thing that that could have been better with this found was founding between the water and aluminum.
Yeah, that would definitely have been useful. Save a little bit of shipping. It's not a huge difference, I think. Potentially I maybe even do like Retalk's found better than between the 2, just because I probably would not go for this many claims on the aluminum. Like, aluminum was always really low this game. Taking the first high definitely makes sense, but with 3 constantly auto-selling it, I think it was hanging at $2–3 for long stretches of time. If you needed more aluminum, it would be pretty easy to buy that out. Okay, claims on aluminum for producing other things. Just in general, I think, if
you don't want to have off-base production.
Right.
Except if you have teleportation, that's fine. But...
Right. I think in this case, maybe looking towards splitting these chunks into a few more triangles, like we'll fit in one there, one there, one there, one there. could have been a better way to arrange the claims. It's a little easier to swap in and out when you need, and save a little bit of fuel, all that stuff.
I just see now he doesn't have water. I mean, he has water, but he
Right,
has
under the
gas on
glass.
it. Not sure how I feel about that. I always like to have at least a stockpile of water.
Yeah, VTalk was doing a good job of stockpiling the water at parts of the game.
Oh yeah, early to mid game when we were talking about it, that was perfect.
Yeah, but as much as it's a good thing to be switching out of water or other resources when they're not the right thing, when they're cheap, when you don't necessarily need to be producing them, it's also just, you have to be very careful that you don't stay out of the market for too long. In this case, glass is probably a little bit worse than the water pumps would be for at least like these two tiles. But yeah, something to watch out for.